Welcome to the Farm Family Harmony podcast. I'm Elaine Fraze, Farm Family Coach, here with another episode full of transition tips, tactics, and sometimes hard truths to get harmony on your farm. Hi there, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Farm Family Harmony podcast. Excuse my voice. I'm having some issues with tiredness of a busy season of speaking, so you might hear the crunch of my lozenge. Ricola is the one that's doing it for me. Anyway, I'm really excited today to have our guest, Arlen Motz from Carstairs, Alberta. Arlen's initials are AM, which also stands for Agricultural Mindset. And Arlen, you're going to have to explain to the listeners what curiosity and empowerment means to you. So tell us more about yourself.
So, like you said, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's an honor and a privilege. And so, like Elaine said, my name is Arlen Motz. And so I started a company about a year ago called Agribusiness Mindset. And really around the premise of empowering the farming community to be curious about whether it's thoughts, emotions, just situations that they encounter. And just all around that, I developed a leadership and a sales course, both, and I've taught both more so in the wholesale or in the retail equipment business, and also in the finance business when it comes to agriculture. So I'm really excited to be on this journey, and
So I had some fun playing with the title of this podcast, and I'm going to call it Rats, the Price of Grain Went Up After I Sold, because you are involved in sales. But Arlen, what's important to me is your own personal story and how, in my world of farm transition, how you see the emotional factors affecting planning, but in your case, the emotional factors affecting selling and marketing, and what impact that has on the farm family and their journey in transition.
So I have the privilege of being part of a farm transition. So my wife and I are in the middle of just figuring out with her parents on what the farm looks like moving forward. And so I'll give you a bit of background to this rats, as you call it.
Yeah. No, I said rats. I mean, I didn't know good English that wasn't going to be, had to be family friendly, but you know, we always hear the downward spiral after you sold at 8 o'clock this morning, and now by 10 o'clock, it's a few bushels more tons, more money per ton or whatever, right? So anyway.
Yeah. So we actually just started to get involved more. So we're doing some farming with Dad on a crop share basis. We started with a quarter section. And so I really got thrown into this from a standpoint of, oh, we're doing this. Okay, let's go, right? And so it's been an awesome ride. And one of the components to that is marketing. So we happen to have canola in the ground. And as we all know, canola has done a roller coaster in numerous ways. And so I relied on my father-in-law, and I call him Dad just because I work closely with him. But I worked closely with him and said, like, you're going to have to help me because I don't know. And I think that mindset right off the get-go, and with my coaching experience and with my, I've written several blogs on my mindset. And that really has helped me to stop myself instead of just ramrodding stuff through, is just to stop, take a bit of a break and just say, okay, how would I like to be told about marketing? And so I went to him first and I said, you're going to have to help me. And that opened up the communication to eliminate the he said, she said.
Yes. Or I told you so.
I told you so. And a lot of times I think I'm really privileged and I really have a lot of respect for my father-in-law. I really do. And he's well known in the community. So I have this mentality that I'm going to allow him to lead while I'm learning and try and glean all the information possible to learn from his many, many, many years of experience. And I got to tell you that as a younger guy coming into this, that is very difficult. There have been times when I thought, man, like we got to get set up. Like we can't be sitting. We got to move. Like, and then the price goes up, and you're like, oh man, like what is going on here? Like I should have waited. I should have been more patient. But one of the things that I've been working through personally is owning the decision and having a why for the decision.
Which is helpful.
100%. 100%. And having that conversation with him going, hey, Dad, like I'm thinking of selling. Like I don't need to sell, but I'm thinking that maybe I should capitalize on it. And I'm okay if it goes up or down. Like, I think I should go for this. What do you think about that? Right.
So do you know your cost of production? Do you know your break even point?
Yes.
There is Linus. Farm Management 101. Good for you.
That's 100. And so we established that at the start. And again, I relied on him to say, okay, Dad, what does this cost? What do I need to? So we broke it out and figured it out. And then that marketing was a little bit above what we had needed for our margin cap. So I'm like, okay, like, but again, there's that buyer's remorse or seller's remorse in this instance. But you're always like, oh man, is he going to get mad at me because I did something? Because we're crop sharing, right? It's not 100% rent. So there's always that what if. And so I went to him and I said, look, I'm going to make mistakes and I'm learning from it. It's not a mistake. I call it a growth window or a growth opportunity. And that's how I look at my learning experience. I'm not going to be perfect in this first 10 years of farming. And that's a critical conversation to the emotions in my thought pattern and how I work and just having open communication.
So Arlen, you have a coaching training background. You have this leadership sales training course that you've been working on. Tell our audience what they do with people who are pushing back, who are objecting or resisting to doing things differently, because you actually are the favorite son-in-law. I don't know if you're the only one, but you're the one that's farming with your father-in-law. So you're in a bit of a unique position because you didn't grow up with him as your father. And when I'm coaching other families, I always say, remember, the in-law is fresh eyes. And fresh eyes is a good thing because it's from a different family of origin and a different way of talking, a different way of being, a different way of doing conflict. So you come into your wife's farm family to work with your father-in-law and you're not wanting to make mistakes. So you've already refrained mistakes, because one of the things that people check off on my audit sheet all the time is, Elaine, show us how to avoid the mistakes that farmers typically make. So what are the mistakes? Reframe. What are the growth opportunities for our listeners if they're coming up with a lot of resistance, especially around what we're talking about today in terms of the marketing and how that impacts their transition plan?
So I'm going to just start a little bit back a little bit. So agribusiness leadership, that is the name of my leadership course. I start with the very first thing of understanding or realizing your belief in yourself, okay, and your worthiness as a person, as an individual. How much worth, where are you at with that? And that's the first foundation to establishing that communication relationship. So what that does in an individual, and some individuals, it takes a year of hard mind work, dealing with their past, working forward. And I also provide coaching on that side, and that is included in that leadership class. So you get a full window. So the first is that. The second piece to that is once you have established that belief and that mindset in who you are as an individual and your worth, then you become empowered yourself. So that's really the second step. And the third step is getting curious to empower others. So and there have been times where mom and dad will be talking about something, and all of a sudden mom will tell my wife, oh, well, this and this about this. And I'm like, okay, I guess dad and I need to have a conversation. I need to know where he's coming from, right? And so therein lies, I'm empowered. I know who I am and my belief in where I'm, that concept. I'm not arrogant. I'm not cocky. I am in a place where I'm
grounded. I like to say
grounded. There's another phrase for it. Absolutely. And then we move into that. Oh man. Okay. Let's have a look at how maybe he's got a perspective. I need to adapt into my thinking. Maybe I haven't learned this yet. Let's get curious. So actually that happened a couple of times in the spring. Tempers or not tempers, but emotions can run a little bit rapid when we're in the field and things are going all different kinds of directions. And so I waited till we were in a kind of a calm, it rained. And so I had some time, and I remember going to dad and saying, okay, I need to back up a bit. This has come to my attention and I just need to have a conversation about it. I need to know what you're thinking, and I'm just here to learn. And when I came at it from that perspective, his shoulders dropped and he was able to communicate and not
be defensive. Yeah.
And I find I'll explain this, before my coaching and what I've learned. I've been on quite a journey the last year and a half, and my family has really noticed a change in me and how I operate and what I do. And I thought I'm not perfect by any stretch. None of us are, but
and let's reiterate that we're all a work in progress.
And I've done a lot to learn. But when I used to be really aggressive, and coming from a sales standpoint, I didn't know how to shut that off. I didn't understand. The other approach too is that I can't change my father-in-law. I can't change anybody, and that's at the heart. If somebody came to me a year and a half ago and said, you're going to learn who you are, what you believe, and your belief in yourself, I would have told them, yeah, right. But I made the choice to do something different and to begin a different journey. I made that choice. And that's the most incredible thing.
So how long have you been farming with your father-in-law now, Arlen?
We've been here 3 years. So it started out that we just helped, like anything that dad needed help with. And then this last year, we actually stepped into the business side. We've been slowly learning that, like everywhere dad would go, I'd go. So I have a very good handle, and we're learning how to do stuff differently, not because I'm pushing him or anything, but just because of those curious conversations.
Well, and my Discuss the Undiscussable keynote talks about coming from curiosity as one of the key tools for talking about tough issues. So my curiosity is the connection that you've seen in your practice from doing the farming with your father-in-law, but also your coaching and leadership work. What's the connection around this emotional empowerment to selling and marketing grain, and how that impacts the farm transition? Tell us the connection.
So good. I think that, I don't think, because I've experienced this firsthand. So I know that at the end of the day, if I'm empowered to believe in me and I'm empowered to be curious, like my one girl at the grain facility we sell to, she's a saint, because man, I got a dozen questions, and then I go back to dad, and I'm curious. I'm not cocky about it and I'm not arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
I want to learn. And I think that from that perspective, it's incredible. And the more that we can do that with the emotions around marketing grain, we have our thresholds. If we do a marketing plan and figure out where we're at from a margin perspective, we have that. Going forward, identifying, okay, I could have done this better, or let's change this. What about changing this? First of all, what about changing this? That should be our question. And okay, so why would I do that? What's the why? Let's get curious about the why. All of a sudden now, as soon as you ask that question about getting curious about the why, you are empowered. You are empowered.
You're also exploring people's intent. We often talk about conflict resolution about, I have no idea what's going on in your head right now, Arlen, unless you talk to me. And that's the action. And the effect is, as a listener, I can feed that back to you. So it's intent, action, effect. And the why helps us understand the decision making, right? Like I always say, you can tell me all kinds of hard things or make a hard decision, as long as you explain to me your why. Why is this so important to you? And where are you coming from on this perspective?
Yeah. I wrote a blog last week about why we run. And why we get so wrapped up in just, I got to go do this. I got to go do that. And at the end of the day, we're wore out. And a lot of times that's a mask for something that we're running from. Okay. And so I would say, if your listeners are curious to go, there's that word, curious. Are curious, go check it out, agribusinessmindset.com.
They find you, Arlen? arlenmotz.com. What's the best way to find you?
Agribusinessmindset.com, and they can go in there and check out the latest blog and sign up for my newsletter every week. And but my word, I'll back up a little bit. My word for the year is curiosity. My word for the last year was worthy, because I was learning that. And now I want to be empowered to be curious. I want that.
So my word a couple of years ago was flourish. My word last year was listen. And I can't remember what word I chose for this year, because it obviously didn't stick very well. But it helps give you a framework, right? So what concerns me is, I was sitting in Omaha, Nebraska at the end of January at the Central Valley Ag Conference, and there was a fellow speaking about marketing. And I was one of the very few women in the room, because I was a speaker and the other women had gone somewhere else. And I asked point blank, I said, who's a better marketer, the women or the men? And he kind of chuckled at me and he said, well, in my experience, Elena, I have men and women as couples who both do the grain marketing, but the women outshine the men because they aren't as emotionally attached to their crop. So there we are talking about emotions again. And you know, I've also just done a podcast recently with my coach, Lydia Carpenter, on being an emotionally strong leader. So obviously your father-in-law is a kind and gentle man and willing to embrace you as a son-in-law and bring you into the operation and teach you all kinds of things. Because the thing that you said is to allow him to lead while I'm learning. So what else, knowing that your self-worth, Arlen, isn't tied up in you being a farmer, like tell us more about that whole mindset about, well, I'm a farmer and this is the way we've always done it. Because I also suspect that in farm transition, there are aging farm men, especially, and women, who are not pulling back or stepping back without stepping away, because their identity is tied up in not their worth as a human being, but I'm a farmer and this is what I have to be. So how do you soften or navigate that kind of mindset?
So in my journey, I read a book called The Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. Great yes. book. And
yeah,
strategic coach. So one of the things I encourage everybody to read that book. It's such a very good book. But one of the things that I've learned from that is I need to look at my father-in-law as
Uh,
and so that doesn't mean that I'm not worth anything, or that, well, my thoughts or my curiosity to learn, or even what I bring to the table. I bring some stuff to the table. That's not he has more knowledge on a lot of the farming things that I don't have. And
how, and how do you, so obviously you've built a lot of bridges of trust and respect. So are there some things that you can share with the listeners? Because that's another thing that comes up in our audit sheet a lot is, Elaine, how can we build more trust in this relationship between the founders and the successors?
it comes down to your emotion. If you're angry and not, again, it comes down to your worth, your belief in you, and then your empowerment and into the curiosity. So if you're curious, your emotion is neutral. If you're not curious and want to learn, your emotion is, list them off, frustrated, angry, all of the things that come up. And don't get me wrong, we all have those, and they come numerous times in a day over every situation. It's our ability to stop that and train our mind. I've worked with clients that even to this day will coach on that. It's like, okay, remember the walk away? Just go for a walk. Just step back, go for a walk, go check the cows, and come back. And
Delayed response.
delayed response. And the ability for our mind to trigger and go, hold on a sec. This emotion does not serve me. And I got to back up. I ran into this with my child yesterday. Something had happened. We were working on something and over lunch, and it went wrong. And I flipped for an instant. And then I'm like, wait a second. I need to be the leader here. And so I said, well, okay, can you just stay right there? I'll be right back. And when I came back, I was much better. And it's that ability to say, you know what, there is more here. And my anger and my frustration is not helping myself and who I am. Because as soon as we allow that emotion, we actually don't think we don't believe in ourselves.
Well, and also I think your brain starts being a lot more irrational when you've escalated to anger. Dr. Dan Allender, who wrote a book on the wounded heart, and which is actually about child abuse.
Yes.
He has a great graphic I've used for years with coaching families about, it's not really anger. Let's go deeper to the primary. Is it you're hurt, you're afraid, fearful, or you're frustrated? And obviously with your child, you're a little bit on the frustrated side there, Mr.
Yeah.
Marty.
Yeah. And it's more understanding, okay, from that emotion, what am I doing? What are the actions that I'm taking? Those don't serve me. What do I want? What do I want the outcome to be? What do I want that result to be? And if that result does not include empowerment or curiosity or any of those things, I don't need it.
Well, and I'm really having fun listening to your language, Arlen, because you're very careful with the words that you choose, which, your words and your thoughts become your behaviors, right? And so in our conflict dynamic profile, I've just been jotting down here as you've been seeking. You've mentioned the word adapt, which is a positive conflict behavior. You mentioned the word putting yourself in the other person's perspective. You've mentioned delaying your response. And you've also mentioned, what do we want the outcomes to be here, which is the other word for that is what are the solutions? And you don't see things as problems. You see them as, what are the outcomes or challenges we want to solve here? And we want to do it together. So I can just imagine there's a young farmer or rancher walking across the field right now with his earbuds on while he's filling trucks or maybe checking the cows or whatever they're doing. And you're shaking things up here a bit, Arlen, because you're not tolerating bad behavior.
Yeah. And it's
you're taking responsibility as an adult, as a farming son-in-law who's new to the game, responsibility for being the learner and having respect for the older generation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I think that if we have an agenda, oftentimes in the coaching world, I talk about agenda. Okay, I got to sit here. I just got to sit here, because if I have, like, going into this, our recording here, like our podcast, like if I would have an agenda, man, I would have totally wrecked it. I had to sit before and just go, okay, all the things before and all the things after, they just can sit there.
And also just to trust the process too, Arlen, of what I call the unfolding. And so this is also what you're doing as well with this mindset is, my word last year was listen. Mm-hmm. I'm a speaker. I'm a professional speaker. I have podcasts. I write books. I do other things. I coach. So I'm always talking, which is why my voice is sore at the moment. It needs a bit of a rest. So the thing is, you're not prejudging the outcome and you're not pre-listening. I'm actually blocking out all the other distractions, and I want to focus on what you have to teach our listeners, because mindset is a very powerful thing. And the fact that your business is called Agribusiness Mindset, you're in a highly specific culture and lane. So what else, just as we go to closing up here a bit, of all the things that we've talked about, what are the 3 things you want listeners to remember, or that you've learned from these courses and coaching that you've done with your salespeople and leadership in agriculture?
I think the number one.
Go ahead. I said, my curiosity, Arlen, is the mindset that our listeners need to find more success in their transition journey. Because we call this rats, the price of grain's gone up. Well, marketing's a really big deal for you to do well, to get the cash into the system of the farm so that you have profitability. So that's why this is important, just if we just talked about marketing. But we're really not here talking about marketing. We're here talking about emotions that serve you well with your mindset. So what do you want the listeners to really hang on to and understanding that?
The first in this whole thing is find a coach or a mentor to work through the belief in yourself. And I'm available. I mean, I and you as well. I mean, that's what we do, is discover the belief in you. That's the first thing. And I would love to chat or whatever. Same with you. Second,
you can do discovery with people reaching out to you. Sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the second piece of that is not only believe in yourself, but be curious. Not only for the emotion, but also in the communication of others. And the third piece to that is be empowered, which happens when we believe in ourselves, but also be curious to empower others. My conversation, my ability to just step away, take a break, come back, that's actually teaching that other person, hey.
You've taught your son too, when you left the room, to regroup and come back in a different frame of mind.
Yeah, totally.
Because children are very astute of reading the emotions and the energy in the room too, right? Well, Arlen, I want to thank you for your time today, and also want to thank you for your excitement about getting back into agriculture as a primary producer with your father-in-law and your wife's family, and also the fact that you did mention Dan Sullivan. I have several close friends who are speakers and ag innovators or whatever who are students of Dan Sullivan and Strategic Coach. So the book you mentioned is The Who, Not How. So don't know if you have an affiliate link, but Dan should say thank you for that shout out. So that's great. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you, listeners, for another spending and parking yourself here with our Farm Family Harmony podcast. We're here to serve you. And as Arlen mentioned, you're more than welcome to go to agribusinessmindset.com and check out his blogs and reach out to him for a discovery call. He's located close to Calgary, Alberta, near Carstairs. And just, we were talking about the blog you just wrote about people running. I always find it funny when I'm on the highway. If I get passed by someone, I go, that guy's from Alberta. Because the Albertans just like to go a little faster down the road than the rest. But not that my name isn't Speedy Edie. That was my nickname too. So I also like to drive above the speed limit, but I'm still getting passed by those folks from Alberta. Thanks for joining us, folks. Hope you have a good week. And remember, it's your farm, it's your family, it's your choice. And as we talked about today, you have the power to be curious and to be empowered to make great choices. So we'll see you next time. Bye for now.